voice go up.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. So at any given time, you would see this dude with them little top ramen bowls walking back and forth. I mean, you could literally, he'd have just the bowls carrying water, and he'd be over. There's a little faucet on the yard where everybody could get water. But this particular faucet in the H unit yard, nobody drank water out of it. It was like, you know what I mean? I'm sure the water was fine, but just so many, geese had crapped all over it, and just people just don't drink water out of it. But he would be over there filling up his bowls and walking over and watering what he was doing. And it looked beautiful. I mean, just beautiful. Like if you've ever seen a woman's hair that's done just right, or a guy like when he gets a good faded haircut, and you're like, God damn, who the fuck did that? It looks like a work of art. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's how this dude kept that garden area.
beautiful.
And just anything that needed to be pruned or manicured, he would just do it with his bare hands. And he had the calmest demeanor out of anybody. But if he just seemed like a wise, like older gentleman, But if you just looked at him and just looked at his face or his looks, you would have thought he was like the hardest killer like you'd ever seen. Like his face didn't give off who he was inside, who his spirit was. He looked mean. He looked like he don't want nobody messing with him or talking to him or nothing. And so you kind of be weary or leery of him, you know what I mean? Um, but if for whatever reason, and I don't remember who introduced me to him, somebody pointed something out just nonchalant one day, and he was over there doing his thing, and he walked over and just like matter of factly was like, well, that happens because of this, and he just kind of came over in our little space and started talking to us. So from then on, I would be, thankful. Hey man, thank you, man. And he would just nod. So there's those people out there, they're not looking for anything from you or anybody that just makes them happy or fulfills their purpose. Um, and something else you were talking about too, like I know there's a lot of, like, we're talking about people in the world who aren't happy, and there's a lot of stuff out here like we can't see, you know what I mean? Like in there, for me anyway, it's not hard to figure out what's going on, because you can pretty much, especially if you're in a dorm, like you can see the play by play of why somebody's in a bad mood, or why something would happen, or a debt that went down, or something that's gonna happen in a second or two. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of survival skills you see, but out here people have their own homes, there's private situations, they're on a phone, a lot of stuff goes on you don't know nothing about. So when you encounter that person in that space or in that place that is like, whoa, hold on a second, what's happening here? It kind of, with a gardening analogy, there was this rose bush that I had transplanted from the golf course I worked at in Santa Maria. When I came home, I brought it with me because, I just wanted to keep it, right, and to give it to my mother and put it in the garden. And I just assumed it was going to look as beautiful and as brilliant as it did over there, not really thinking about the heat and the different places and just different things. And it's not like I didn't do everything I wasn't supposed to do, but it never bloomed like a single. Well, I can't say it didn't bloom a single flower. It did bloom an occasional flower, like out of the blue, but it was very, very small, and it didn't last very long, and it was a lot of like shoots coming off of it. And finally, I mean, I'm talking about for the last 3 years, like I just gave up on it. I went to Lowe's and I bought another like really aromatic flower that sort of matched the colors of the other things going on. There's a bottle brush out there and another rose bush. Anyway, so I put it between those, and it fits the color scheme, and it smells wonderful.
Mm.
And but the thing, when I pulled up the other rose bush, there was these, and I'd have to look it up, but it looked like coffee beans in clusters underneath the root system. And I took pictures of it and I sent it in, and it was like basically something that was like, it was like a weed that like attached itself to the roots and was essentially choking the life or the growth out of the plant. It did have leaves on it. I mean, they were green. I mean, the plant was alive, but it wasn't allowing it to like have, mature, proper blooming
Yeah,
flowers.
yeah.
And I think so many of us out here, without trying to sound, wise or anything, like just to speak to what you were saying, like I think so many of us out here have so many things that are sucking the life out of us
Oh yeah.
underneath the surface. You know what I mean? And I feel like we do get triggered by what we see like on TV or the news or politics or whatever, that, you know, the justice that isn't or is or whatever, you know, isn't happening or being done or for whatever reason. But it, you know, it speaks to whatever is going on inside of us. And so it's another way of us all being connected, but instead of like being connected in a way that feels empowering and fruitful and loam and peaceful and, you know what I mean, sunshine to my soul, it's the exact opposite. And you know, those are, sadly, you know, are the facts of life, you know. And it really does suck, you know what I mean. But what also sucks is I can't dunk like LeBron James on a basketball court. You know what I mean? For the life of me, I cannot fly through the sky and just jam the ball down like he does. And I have to accept that. And I've gone to support groups and I've asked for help.
It's good to know there's such a diverse group of different kinds of support groups out there. Yeah, good
Yeah,
to know.
yeah. Most of them, you know, aren't so kind when they explain to me the facts of life. But and something else you're talking about too was oh, you're saying that the gardener, man, I forgot what it was, but I was gonna say, um, and Avenal too. I was gonna say was knowing that garden is there and like the pathway and the walkway and how it changes and um just picturing it in my head because I've been there and I know what it looked like before and just picturing it now, like I can imagine that like impact his, not just the participants in the class or the program, you know what I mean, but just dudes who just walk by there
Oh,
on,
absolutely.
on a daily basis. Like
Absolutely.
there's a movie that came out a long time ago. I say a long time ago, but I'm talking about like 80s, mid 80s, maybe. It was called Solar Babies. For anybody, have you seen it?
Solar babies. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do remember that. Yeah, I do.
So, you know, they're in this prison that's in like some desert wasteland, and some kid has a flower and he waters it every day, and the warden like crumbles it in his hand or does something, or has like a heating wand and he kills it. And then, you know, I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it if they want to watch it. But that made me think of Avenal right now with having the plants there. Like, to me, that was like a solar baby prison. Man, that sucker was just dry, and there was like valley fever, and people were dying,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean, it was like sad, man. And to know that there's plants and there's life and there's love, and I just know like from even the guys in the H unit at San Quentin who would walk by the garden, and the gardener himself, you know, the gardener dude that I'm telling you who watered all that stuff wasn't even in our class. Like
That's crazy.
he just did it. Like we tried to get him in the class, but he had too many years. He had too much time. So the CRM or whatever, like you have to be like so close to going home because of the
Oh, yeah.
program. Something to do with state of California and something that they passed. I don't remember the proposition, but it was the one that gave you rack credits and
Yep.
milestones. Like so they have to give those opportunities to people who are closer to going home.
Going home or
It's
going
just
forward
it's
or
just the way
yeah.
it works. Yeah. So he was like systematically rejected before he even got a chance. And I think the ladies who ran our group then were like, we've been trying to get him in, but you know, they won't let us because we have to give you guys the chance first. So anyway, he just did all that because he wanted to. And he was actually up on the what they call the lower yard. It's up on the lower yard because H units down. Have you been down there? Have you been to San Quentin?
No, I haven't, but we
Oh,
got our gardens there, a couple of them actually there. So when I
yeah.
started talking about the upper and the lower guard, I'm like, oh yeah, because the program manager, my colleague who runs those, talks about these different
Yeah.
locations and um go on.
I was gonna say, yeah. So when I say up on the lower yard, it always sounds weird.
Hmm.
Um, but what, you know, the prison calls the lower yard is the one where the baseball diamond is, and then so the media center off to the right had a lot of succulents. Fennel was the first time I knew what fennel was. I was like, man, it smells like licorice. Somebody pointed that out to me. So, and I think they started a program up there, but it wasn't there on the lower yard when I was there. And then what they call the upper yard is like where the hole is, and death row goes out to yard out there. Well, they don't have death row anymore, but so anyway, down when I say down on H unit, we're literally like right on the water. You could see, you know, I think it's called Drake's Bay or whatever. And
Yeah.
I think I was sharing that with you before. Like I think Khadijah and something else you were talking about too about one of the jobs you had with nursing mothers. I think you were talking about. So Khadijah used to come in, and when she told us she was a what's that thing called, like a new mom, a new mommy, or
A
it's like
doula.
Yeah, a doula. When she talked about that, like I was like, oh, that's why. Because I really feel like, certain people like yourself and Khadijah, like you guys have this purpose that is nurturing. You know what I mean? It's not an accident. You know what I mean? That you guys are the way you are and that you have that effect on other people. You know what I mean? It's something that is essential and needed and wonderful and part of the miracle of life and really magical because she used to speak to us during our opening like grounding meditation, and a lot of times when I first started, I would just kind of stare off at the water. But after her doing it a few times and me watching other people close their eyes and really get into it, I was like, you know what? I just let go. I was like, I'm going to give up this eye opening, staring at everybody, you know what I mean? Being on my toes type shit. You know what I mean? I was like, all right, fuck it, let's go. So then that was huge, and
That's amazing. That's wonderful.
yeah. And she would talk about like doing raspberries. She would like tell us all to do raspberries, like, and so you do it and you do feel like this sensational change about yourself. So those things are really amazing, and like I said, transformational. And I think I was kind of something I was going to say earlier too was just like the compost takes timing, you know what I mean, to transform and change. A lot of us, you know what I mean, depending on, like, if I would have met you guys or this program in 2012 at Avenal, part of my mind goes, well, maybe the change would have started sooner, but maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe you know what I mean? Maybe, it took until 2000. I don't think I started that program till it was right after COVID when um, the program lifted because we were kind of like locked down like for like 14 months, and then it was very slow with volunteers. And I think that was one of the first things to come back because it was an outside program and they weren't allowing anything indoors, but at that time inside gardening was allowed to come in, so that was great. And then they oh no, what, I think I did get accepted before COVID because they corresponded with us through
Yeah,
it.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
so it was great to see them again. But I think I had just barely got into that program right before the lockdown happened. So for whatever reason, my composting, took many, many years to develop, to get to where I am. And I think that speaks more to like your other prior job where you were working with kids who were different learners or whatever. And hindsight being what it is, I was never that kind of student that could sit in a classroom and just listen like to the teacher, do my homework, turn it in, and go sit down and be good, quiet kid. I've been sitting here with you for how long, and I barely gave you a moment to speak. You know what I mean? You can imagine
We
my
are the
future.
same. We are the same.
Yeah, I feel bad for my teachers, but I'm like, they're teachers. Why couldn't they figure it out? Like, you know what I mean? Why'd they have to really do that? Like, because they became part of like, the Pink Floyd and the brick in the wall. Like, they became part of the system. They're like, everybody's against me. Like, how is this? You know what I mean? Why can't you just be a bright, funny, communicative, cool kid? Like,
Mm.
some kind of different learning would have been great because my roots, at an early age, like I'm talking about like kindergarten, the summer of my kindergarten year before I went into first grade, I was hanging around this older kid who was like one of my older sister's ages, and he was doing a burglary, and I was with him. You know what I mean? And I remember that was the first time I rode home in a police car. I wasn't in cuffs, but I had to go see some police psychologist and answer these questions, and they give me a little coloring book, and it's insane. You know what I mean? Like this is real life. Like this ain't some movie. You know what I mean? This shit really happened. So for
There
you to be able to step in and do what you did and do what you do, I think is amazing. So yeah, I do appreciate that.
Thank you. I I just like definitely am someone who, maybe much like you, in my way, I had plenty of tough, surprising, adverse experiences growing up, and went to lots of schools and lived in lots of places before we kind of settled down, and with my mom and my first stepdad, and so it's I think like the idea that. And I mean, I could like really go off on this for a long time, so I won't. But just let's suffice to say that I think, even a lot of school systems, have become really just institutionalized, and that the
Yeah.
idea that schools to prison pipeline is a profound, real thing that we see that happens, even if it's not as like conscious, as some people. think it is or say it is or deny that it is, and there's just something about, wanting everybody to work in a system and wanting kids to be quiet and just do it and having big classrooms filled with a lot of kiddos who a lot of the time you spend in the day is just moving them from one place to another, teaching them how to line up straight, teaching them how to walk on a line. It's kind of like prison.
Yep.
And it just was just always just that person who, it's funny, I mean, for all of this, just nurturing love that I feel comes with a lot of rebellion, comes as the kid who was, canceled from about 9 years old,
Yeah.
always in the family. The kid who was, just like always talking, always, just, but like, I definitely have really seen that, so simple as just with especially with kids and working with kids at the school, working with kids at the zoo and a lot of different capacities. Um, really just they no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, no matter what their deal is, they just you see them blossom through positive reinforcement, period.
Yeah.
Just through just accepting them for who they are and just smiling along with people, just finding, especially with kids, just like really finding the joy in kids who are having a hard time and who are struggling. It's like God slowing down and just really just like praising them for even the tiniest effort, which is so huge that they're actually making, is brings and you know what? It's funny because positive reinforcement, you do it, you give people, or yourself positive reinforcement, and the more you do it, you just do it more and more. Like it feels some kind of way. It's like a practice. You train yourself, you develop your practice of positive reinforcement, and then it unlocks so much inside you that you crave it. You want it. And it's almost like a way of like training yourself to see the gold, in people,
Yep.
to see the gold, to just go in for it, and just connect to that, and yeah, so I think, the school, oh my God, schools and systems, yeah, they could just become so rigid and so institutionalized that they forget all of the, wild, joyful uniqueness that, all human beings have,
Yeah.
along with the desire to unite, along with the desire to cooperate, but is also all of these different little ways that we are. And I don't know, I'm like, wow, I have this one life. I definitely do enjoy all these different kinds of people, and just uh, vibing with so many different kinds of folks. And maybe that's part of why I'm like, and including, just like going out and working with men and working with these women in the gardens and just like except just I don't know, enjoying that bit of humanity, and that's just definitely something in different capacities that I've been doing that it gives. Yeah, they say, don't, oh, you should separate your personal life and your work life and stuff, but like I almost can't really. I just put myself all the way in whatever it is I'm doing at the moment. And then
Yeah.
they blend. They blend really well, actually,
Yeah. It speaks to like Chat GPT, right? Bahara told me about Chat GPT, I think a year ago, a year and a half ago. And at first it was kind of like, okay, well, I'll ask it this or I'll use it for this. But don't get me wrong, like it helps in so many ways, but there's even by, even more ways that it's incapable of doing what it can't do. So I've kind of been able to explore that. But and that being said, like some of the things you're speaking to, like because my brain since I've been a little kid, doesn't matter, I have to know why. I'm sure people talk about kids being annoying, saying, well, why is this and why is that, and da, 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 da. And I was definitely one of those kids and like a sponge of information. I just need to absorb everything, and I do absorb everything. I have this antenna, that's very sensitive, and I'm like I pick up all kinds of stuff, probably too much stuff. But that being said, um, I think, you know, there's a lot of people, I'd say, well, just my two cents on that. It's like, one, yeah, it's unfortunate that the education system doesn't appreciate or recognize, different individuals and say, okay, we have this class for special kids over here, or different kids, or my mom, I remember she told me that there was some school, it was for like kids that like with talents or something, that if you had acting skills or writing or poetry or music, something, it was like an advanced school, that she did, think about it, that I'd belong there, and that, it was like something she thought about, and she did contact them, but it was too much money, and you can't, I mean, they couldn't, my parents couldn't afford that. But it was neat to hear her say that, like, that somebody recognized something in me back then, and that there was an attempt made, and unfortunately it didn't happen. And I don't know, I feel like it would have been neat to know that back then. Like,
Oh yeah.
I wish somebody would have told me that,
Yeah.
instead of just, what I mean? Because I felt rejected by everybody everywhere. I felt misunderstood, and in my attempts to, my little root system, and belonging, and being understood, like the criminal underworld, I guess if you want to call it that, is really understanding. You know what I mean? When you talk to somebody else from another troubled home or background,
Yeah.
they know exactly what you're going through. And they go, oh, wow, okay, this is where I belong. The only difference is we're doing lines of meth, we're breaking into people's houses and cars, and we're abusing women, and we're doing all kinds of stuff that is also part of the criminal underworld. And unfortunately, like, it's sad, but like, when you know who your victims are, it's not just some house you broke into to steal a TV or a car to get an amp or a stereo or whatever. You know what I mean? These are actual people with jobs. They paid for these things. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of the restorative justice and all the programs, victims impact. But when you don't put a face to this object that you needed or took or whatever, that there's no connection there. And not having a connection, doesn't really, I'd say, well, it helps empower you to do it, because it's a whole different story. I think, like, with a lot of these, well, that's a whole nother topic about, I was gonna say, yeah, all these different, like, crimes are happening in the world, but I really believe, like, the connection. If the connection's there, and this person's a human being, and you're a human being, and like, you deserve love in life, like, there's no reason for you to do these things. And as unfortunate it is that I had to abuse myself, and with drugs and everything else, that type of energy was, all I had or chose or recognized with, and it just continued to, anybody in my path or around me was affected by that, because that's who I was. And compared to, full of resentment and anger and all those things, compared to now, where, like, it's the exact opposite. So people who are around me get to see the good side of me, the happy side, intellectual side, and the framework for recovery. I mean, it does start in the mind. I remember reading a Joyce Myers book called The Battlefield of the Mind, and
Mm.
years and years ago. And there was another one by Rick Warren, I think it's called The Purpose Driven Life.
Oh,
And those were like right before I really started making those changes. And if it wasn't for those things, if I was raised in that environment or whatever, I could say, I wouldn't have had these choices, or had these problems or whatever. And as sad as it is for anybody that I've ever, something else from AA and NA, when you make amends, it's like recognizing what you did wrong, asking God for forgiveness, forgiving yourself, and then admitting these things to another human being, like, those three things, like, really do free you. And when it's applicable and when it's possible, you can apologize to the person you did, or make amends to somebody else. Like, I stole $20 from my mother's purse when I was 8 years old, but I see a homeless person, I got a $20 bill in my pocket, and I just go hand it to them and walk off. I just vicariously, you know what I mean, wrote something off my list, you know. And people can complain and tell me, don't give them money, they're just going to buy drugs. It isn't up to me what that dude does with that $20. You know what I mean? That's none of my business. I'm not there to, like, safeguard him or ridicule him or follow him around and see if he bought a beer with it. It's not up to me. Um,
mm.
so it's just stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, um, I think in 2009, before I got locked up this time, somebody had told me that in the meeting. He was like, yeah, man, when I get frustrated, I just go around and buy a bunch of burgers from McDonald's, and I go around and give them to homeless people. And I remember just being clueless, thinking, well, how does that make you feel better? You know what I mean? Like, just made no sense. But one thing I did want to say too, when you were talking a minute ago about the school system, it was like, there or any injustice in the world, it's like, there's a serenity prayer, for the things that we can and cannot control in our life. And it doesn't mean that it's not wrong. It doesn't mean that it doesn't bother us, but there's little moments of gratitude where, I may not agree with the school system or a lot of, government policies or this way or that way or whatever. But like when there's moments like this, when we're talking like this, it reminds me that we have the freedom at least to have little pockets, you know what I mean? Of truth and justice and honor and integrity and those things that build character and there are signs of character. So in those moments, I go, you know what? The world may not be a perfect place, but at least, this is perfect. You know what I mean? And it's perfect because it's not like, I guess, like you said, like I don't know, like guarded or forced or this or that. There's so many like wonderful programs that are like, there's so many checkpoints, you know what I mean? To do something. Or there's a therapist that I have that I'm speaking to through the parole, and that I have to. It's a legal requirement. I have no choice. And I had some resentments about that. I was like, dude, you guys don't understand. I don't think they understand San Quentin. Like, I'm trying to tell people, like, this is like an insane, like if you've ever been to any prison anywhere, if you could go there, like they say for college programs out here, if you go there, you go anywhere. I feel like that about that place. It was like a little university, a little Hollywood. It was a little prayer circle. It was all a little garden bed. It was all those things. And I try to explain to these people out here, like on the parole system, and I'm like, you guys don't understand. Like, I'm not the same person I was. You guys are talking to me like I'm the same dude I was as a juvenile in the youth authority, as the person who committed the crime that I did to go to prison. Like, you guys are looking at my lifetime arrest record and everything bad about me in my little C file, whatever people said about me that they wrote little notes and shit. It's all in there. You guys are looking at that dude and treating me that way. And their business is their business. Like, just like some of them correctional officers that don't want to turn that hose on to water the garden. Hey, their job is their job. Like, I ain't here to have feelings for you, buddy. You know what I mean? Just check
Ugh.
in, piss in the bottle, and get the fuck out of here. Sometimes it's just like that. And so for those reasons, like I the therapist that I have, like, instead of like telling her over, I'm rehabilitated, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I was helped by this program, this program. Instead of doing all that, I just gave up. I was like, look, we got to talk once or twice a month. What's going on with you? How are you? You know what I mean? I said, you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or ask you personal stuff. She goes, no, that's fine. I said, all right, cool. So let's just talk, because I can't talk anymore about causative factors and systemic changes and my
Fair
upbringing. I
enough.
mean,
Fair
yeah,
enough. Yeah,
but
therapy is definitely one of those things that it comes if it comes through our life, because of need or want when we're a kid, a youth, an adult, what have you. It serves a lot of different purposes, It could definitely be just sort of regimented and check the box and very pathologized and very, structured. It can be so loose and just be filled with life coaching or encouragement or just like a venting space, a place to have space held for you, Currently, I am not in therapy, but I have enjoyed various different, and I have not enjoyed various different
yep,
eras of therapy.
yep.
Probably since I was 12, the first time I sat down with a therapist. But yeah, I feel you on that. It's
That brings up a point, like what you were saying a little while ago, and then right now it just reminded me that even she, without you know giving up, her name or anything confidential, there was something that she said at one point about having lived experience. You know what I mean? She stopped me at one point. Goes, I was talking about something. She goes, no, I understand, Jesse. I understand. She goes, I have lived experience, so I just don't want you to think you're alone in this. And then I think that is a huge statement for me to understand when she's going, or when she responds a certain way. Okay, I know I'm talking to somebody who gets it. And I think same thing with what you're talking about right now. Like, it's not like you need to validate something I'm saying, but like having lived experience makes more sense to me as to why you're doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? Because you know what needs to be done and how it needs to be addressed. And plus you have those skills and, like, what I mean, that personality.
mm,
And what something too was I was gonna say, like, for certain guys, without putting out their business or whatever, there's certain individuals that I met who didn't have the best upbringings, you know what I mean? Well, myself included, but for people who don't understand, they think, well, why does a woman want to go into a male prison and blah, blah, blah? Well, I would say you may be the first olive branch to reach out to them in a way to where they can really interact with you to get their confidence or they're humanistic, especially if they're still incarcerated for a crime against a woman. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of dudes in there, domestic violence and other things that go along with that,
Yeah.
human trafficking. Like their track record has been use and abuse to the effect that crawling out of that hole as a human being to wanting to be treated as a human being or treating a woman as a human being, there's a lot to that. And somebody's got to, break the ice. Somebody's got to start treating them like a person for them to want to treat other people like a person. So, being as a woman and going in there, like, if people don't give you enough credit, like you're doing a great job, and you ever seen those ships that go into like Alaska or something, and they're crushing the ice as they're like paving a way?
I like seeing myself that way, actually. I'm into that. You know, I have thought a lot. I think a lot about that. I mean, I think just being I think so much about it. And I've just, through my own experiences, books, things I've read, people I've known, family, so many things, I have put in my mind, along with just kind of the person I am in this life. It's like, just I don't think I like overthink. I don't create anxieties in myself of trying to overanalyze, but I do think a lot about, yeah, other people's point of view, cause and effect, what can create, this and that from different people's perspectives. And I definitely know that, as a woman going in and as a particular kind of woman, we all are, but like also just, a feminist, an educator, a mom, like all these things, I definitely go in knowing that there's some kind of opportunity, there's a profound opportunity for like, yeah, for me to be able to reach them and connect, and provide opportunity. That's what I'm there to do in my job. But relationally, I know that like I am like a sister, a friend, a coworker. I'm the girl next door. I'm like a daughter. I'm a mom. In a sense, those archetypes that get associated with women, I know I'm all of those things, to in some way or another for the guys in my programs. And I'm just me too, as time goes, they get to know me, I'm just me, Jenny, a little, all the ways that they just like see my personality and my energy. But, and I know that they've had so many kinds of experiences and really honestly, as you just can't tell me, I mean, other than whatever that tiny little percent of the mystery of life of folks who are just, born some kind of way. People who have gone through things and are incarcerated, usual at this in this country, at this place, usually were incarcerated very, very young, and there were some very specific circumstances going on, and it was a rough, landscape to grow a garden, to grow themselves,
Yeah.
and I just am like, I feel very conscious of the fact that the relationship that we develop is an opportunity for them, is part of the rehabilitation, is part of what's restorative, is part having that human, that friendship, the joking, the just the trust, and the friendship and the give and take of knowledge, is, and really I say give and take because I mean I receive, so much insight and experience that they have. And it's incredible, and I know that that's a big deal. And it's I never really would have pictured myself, honestly, like working in a men's prison, going into a men's prison to teach. I just never imagined that, and yet I'm like, oh yeah, somehow I am. Someone's got to break the ice. I freaking wrote that down. I love that. And I'm like, I am one of those someones. I just can do that. That's the benefit of maybe some of the hard times I've had that made me have to flex, those inner muscles that ha where I have a certain kind of strength for that. And but also, I mean, it's a mutual vulnerability that we have, that we share together, and that can create a trust. And the ability for maybe I'm going too hard on this, but like the ability I feel can't help but like I see the guys in the garden and they have literally shared when I am harvesting something from my garden, I realize I could nurture someone, I can feed someone, I could feed my kids, I could provide something, this was just nothing before I was here. And then I planted this and then taking care of it. And the way it makes them feel, I know that's also reflected in the relationship that we have. It's like,
Yep.
no, they can have that friendship. They can have that connection. They can be treated with kindness and they can receive that. And they can also treat that and build a relationship, just like the growing the food. It's like the growing the inner reciprocal, just like relationship self, especially with a woman. And absolutely, all men are from women.
Yeah.
So I mean, and there is that, I know I have that. I'm not trying to walk around being everyone's mother. It's not that I'm mothering everyone, but I know I'd kind of bring that energy. And I don't really, I'm 51 years old. I'm not trying to like deny aspects of myself at this point. You know what I'm saying? I'm just am. And it just like it feels good for me and feels right for me to like be myself. It feels therefore right to just allow that energy to flow with them. And I know it's good for them. And that makes me happy,
Yep.
you
There
know.
was there was a program called Enneagram, and they talked
That's so
about
interesting. I heard you talking about that. Sorry, go on.
no, yeah, they talked about if anybody wants to look it up, I think it's ENNEAGRAM. It'll show this like kind of like a pyramid type of personalities. Well, it's more of a anyway, it's a circle with a bunch like the like the human thing that I think they drew for it was David or anyway one of those Isaac Newton or somebody.
The Da Vinci Circle,
Da
man.
Vinci Circle, that one. I knew it was somebody famous.
It does kind of look like that. Yeah.
But it's at some point during that journey, I was in that class for like a year, and at some point they talked about our consciousness and like our personality traits is what it's a lot about is our strengths, and those things are really empowering when you know what your strengths are and who you are, what you just spoke to, and that's amazing and profound, and it's great, and I wish that for everybody to know who they are and not only what they who they are but what they are and how they apply that, because that's when you're free and everything just flows. I think after that it's not about a problem, it's about okay, what next, what's next, okay, well, how do I fix this, okay, there's got to be a tool for that. And anyway, one of the things they talked about was in our mother's womb, from the very time of our conception, like when we're the lima bean size of cells, that we are who we are, that our consciousness,
Mm.
it is always present, and we're just this whatever you want to call it, this loam or this ohm. It's us, and
Mm.
and everything that our mother feels, we feel. Everything she eats, we eat. Everything she drinks, everything that goes on around her, we're becoming privy to and listening and feeling. You know what I mean? Emotionally and everything. So by the time we're born, we're downloaded. Our app is up. We're ready to go. And don't get me wrong, there's more information that goes, and our phone is full of apps now, and we're gonna always be adding more apps. But that connection to our mothers is so important.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, just it's unfathomable that we cannot comprehend the importance of the connection to our mothers and to women in general. So I would say, to speak to that, the gardening program really does teach that. The just all those things when you're putting that seed in the soil is how important that is. So when you see that sprout up, and another thing too about change is that seed that until it breaks open, you know what I mean? It's not free. And so that shell or whatever we have around us, that's criminal thinking, the criminality, whatever abuse, whatever resentment, whatever shame we had that created that shell to keep our human instincts trapped. Like for me, this prison term, like I always say, that prison was hard enough to break me. You know what I mean?
Oh,
But in order to allow me to grow. And if for anybody who feels bad for people in prison, I would say, don't get me wrong, there are some sad situations. There's sad situations out here. But I would say for a kid who didn't get what he needed in an education system or out on the playground or from Pop Warner football or Little League or you know what I mean? Like by the time I was incarcerated, it like that was the best thing that ever happened to me. You know what I mean? Like it literally